Minister for Equality's misnomer, Kemi Badenoch, has hit the Tory campaign trail, pledging to rewrite the Equalities Act if the Tories win the election. She says it's to, quote, end confusion around definitions of sex and gender. In reality, it's part of a long-running Tory scare campaign, one backed by quite a few in Labour too, about single-sex spaces. Of course, what Badenoch really wanted to do was resurrect a panic about some of society's most vulnerable people in exchange for a Tory bump in the polls, one that hasn't yet materialised.
That short clip you have just watched is one of the imbeciles of Novara media talking just before the 2024 general election, in which the Conservative government was pummeled, due in part to its failure to tackle illegal immigration. The election of Keir Starmer means the nation is out of the frying pan into the fire, but that's another story. Who are the vulnerable people this half-wit was talking about? Well, some of them are genuinely vulnerable, like these two lost souls. I found this photograph some time ago. I'm not what most people would consider a sentimental type, but every time I see it I feel a mixture of sadness and acute anger. Sadness for two beautiful young women who have subjected themselves to this obscene and totally unnecessary medical procedure. Anger that there are members of the medical profession who are twisted enough to perform operations of this nature, and worse. I put a link below to my full-length documentary, Transsanity, which deals with the trans issue, including vulnerable people like these two. But here I want to concentrate not on the prey, but on the predators. There are many organisations throughout the Western world especially that are pushing for what they call LGBT rights, LGBTQ rights. The letters can be expanded. In Britain, this madness started in the 1960s when the so-called Wolfenden reforms legalised homosexual acts between consenting adults over the age of 21. Religious and medical objections aside, no reasonable person could oppose that, provided homosexuals practiced their perversion in their own homes or on premises licensed specifically to cater for them. In England, 2 men were executed for consensual buggery as late as 1835. Under Islamic law, men still are, occasionally. I think most people would agree this is far too severe a punishment, and locking up homosexuals with other men has always seemed to me to be more than a little absurd. If homosexuals had had the good grace to accept their legal victory and get on with their lives like the rest of us, Britain and the world would have been a better place. Instead they had to push for more. The age of consent was lowered to 18, then to 16, and the madness continues. The Stonewall organisation is a relative latecomer to this sordid business. In recent years, however, it has come in for criticism even from homosexuals, and especially lesbians, for pushing not simply the homosexual agenda, but the trans agenda. There are similar organisations in the United States, and a plethora of individuals who are pushing it. So what is the trans agenda? It isn't simply to normalise the fetish of men dressing up as women, but to enable males, including predatory males, to invade women's spaces. Even worse and far more sickening, it is to brainwash sexually confused teens or even pre-teens into believing they were born in the wrong body, and to assist them to change sex. Sex is determined at the genetic level. However, it is possible for people of both sexes to undergo what is known as sex reassignment surgery. If an adult man or woman wants to undergo this risky process, it is that person's right. All that is necessary is to find the funding for it and a surgeon corrupt enough or brainwashed enough to perform the operation. My advice is don't, but at the end of the day, this is a question of individual rights. Okay, let's look at a few predators. First though, here is a small sample of the rhetoric used by supporters of this perversion. This is Lloyd Russell-Moyle, a homosexual Labour MP and unsurprisingly an HIV sufferer.
For many women, the dignity of being a women-only space, of knowing that there are no men that are going to be there, is so important. We will see a chilling effect on important single-sex rights if this goes through.
Goodness me, that speech was probably one of the worst transphobic dog whistle speeches that I've heard in an awful long time. The idea of linking trans people with predators, frankly, is disgusting, and you should be ashamed.
Get that? Any criticism of any trans individual or policy favouring trans individuals can only be motivated by hatred. This is a tactic that is used widely by other lobbies. For example, any criticism of Israeli government policies can be denounced as anti-Semitic. Conversely, any criticism of Palestinian terrorism can be denounced as Islamophobic. You get the idea. Of course, not all trans people are predators, but any man who invades a female-only space without a very good reason should be presumed to be a predator. And that is what we are talking about. Not women entering male changing rooms, but predatory males going where they don't belong. Okay, let's look at a few. We start with a notorious case. Notorious especially because when the father of the first victim protested about it at a school board meeting, he was arrested.
Judge has ruled a teenage boy did sexually assault a classmate in the restroom at Stonebridge High School back in May. Now, this happened in Loudoun County, but this story is getting a lot of attention right now because that same teenage boy is accused of sexually assaulting another student after that first incident. Now, students and staff are staging a walkout. Our Nicole D'Antonio is at Stonebridge High School right now in Ashburn. And Nicole, what are students telling you there?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. You know, this has been a pretty busy morning. This is one of several schools that had this walkout. And we were out here actually as we saw a small group of about several dozen students. They walked outside the school. They gathered in that stadium behind us. But, you know, a lot of them wearing white, others holding signs showing support. But this was one of many schools that were also having walkouts. Take a look at this video here from Sky 9. We were there. We were covering as we saw additional crowds gathered in the front lawn of Loudoun County High School, Briar Woods, Light Ridge High School. This all stems from an incident which occurred here at Stonebridge over the summer when a teen boy was accused of sexually assaulting a classmate in the girls' bathroom. Now, yesterday, a judge said the 15-year-old boy did actually commit the crime, which is the juvenile court equivalent of a guilty verdict. Now, according to the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office, the boy has also been accused of another assault at a second school, which allegedly took place months after that first one. Now, this case continues to generate attention all around the nation, in part because of a policy change here in Loudoun County, allowing transgender students to use the bathroom, which matches their gender identity. Now, you know, we'll be keeping a close eye on that school board meeting this afternoon at 4 o'clock. But in the meantime, as for this walkout, we did talk with a spokesperson for the school district. They say that this walkout was actually planned by parents in the district and not by students. Guys.
Yeah, Nicole, and we know the superintendent there in Loudoun County even admitted just a couple of weeks ago that the school system needs to do better when it comes to protecting students in this realm. Nicole, thank you. And late last night, the law group representing the victim's family posted a statement to Facebook saying they were relieved and grateful for that outcome in court. The statement goes on to say, quote, "No one should have to endure what this family has endured, and now their focus is completely upon their daughter's health and safety as she progresses forward with her life. The victim is a survivor and a fighter, and we are confident that she will grow even stronger with each passing day."
Here is a truly shocking exchange in the American Parliament between Senator Kennedy and an activist magistrate, sadly a female one.
Do you remember an inmate named William McLean, also known as July Justine Shelby?
Yes, I know who you're referring to.
Okay. Mr. McLean raped a child, didn't he?
30 years ago, the petitioner in the habeas case before me
Did he rape a child?
He pled guilty to that crime. Yes, it's abhorrent.
And then he raped he raped a little boy, right?
I believe that's correct. I believe he pled guilty to two acts of sexual violence.
And then he raped a 17-year-old girl, right?
Again, this case was handled by the state court in Indiana, but
I'm just asking you the facts. Don't stall on me now. Did he rape a 17-year-old girl or not after raping a 9-year-old boy?
I believe that's what he pled guilty to.
Okay, and then he went to prison, didn't he?
Yes, the petitioner was.
And then he came out and he sent child porn, basically adults raping little children, to another sex offender. And he was sent back to prison, right?
The petitioner pled guilty to
Was he sent back to prison?
Well, that case was in the federal system, so.
Was he sent back to prison?
Yes, this time to federal prison.
Thank you. And then he decided to transition, and he became a female and started going by July Justine Shelby. Is that right?
Yes.
And Ms. Shelby said, I don't want to go to a male prison. I want to go to a female prison. And the Board of Prisons said, what planet did you parachute in from? You're going to a male prison with this kind of record. And you sent him to a female prison, didn't you? You said that the Board of Prisons was trying to violate Ms. Shelby, former Mr. McLean's constitutional rights, didn't you?
I issued a report and recommendation to the district judge recommending that the district judge transfer the petitioner to a women's facility. The district judge adopted that recommendation.
The Board of Prisons was trying to violate Ms. Shelby's, Mr. McLean's constitutional rights, didn't you?
So I based my decision on the facts that were presented to me in the record evidence.
But it wasn't that your ruling?
I recommended finding that under Estelle versus Gamble.
Why won't you admit that was your ruling? Are you ashamed of it?
I'm not. I'm answering the question. I applied Estelle versus
But
Gamble.
was that your ruling?
My recommendation was that the petitioner's serious medical needs were being denied by keeping her in a men's facility.
A violation of the Eighth Amendment, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And how big was Ms. Shelby, Mr. McLean?
I don't have a specific recollection. Your colleague just suggested that she was more than 6 feet tall.
And you told the Board of Prisons, well, she'll be okay. The other women in the female prison will be okay because it's only hypothetical that Ms. Shelby, Mr. McLean would reoffend again after he's already raped a 9-year-old boy and a 17-year-old girl and has been sending child porn through the mail. You said there's no chance he'll reoffend again.
That interchange illustrates just how blind are these trans fanatics and their fellow travellers to reason. Here is the case of another predator, this time in Canada. Try not to laugh. Bear in mind there is nothing humorous about men being given a free pass to invade women's spaces and do the kind of things this lowlife did.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in Windsor, Ontario. And folks, I'm standing outside the Ontario Court of Justice, and I was successful in getting some information in terms of what's happening with Cody Detremont, aka Desiree Anderson, aka the Trans Cat of Windsor. Now, you might recall the bizarre case of Cody Detremont going back more than a year ago. He went into a Windsor women's shelter under an alias, Desiree Anderson. He was identifying as female. For starters, folks, I want to have you take a look at a mugshot, if you will, of Cody Detremont. Does that resemble any woman, any female you've ever come across? But I digress. The tragedy was, within days of him being in that shelter, well, the inevitable happened. He allegedly sexually assaulted biological females. Now, last summer, we came to Windsor to get an update. We went to the shelter, and lo and behold, check out how we were treated by the woke 20-something female shelter employees. It's unbelievable. How does a biological male get into a female shelter, ma'am?
It was a transgender woman, so that's my only comment that I'm going to say about that.
Okay, but at the end of the day, that's a man, right?
Transgender woman.
Here are 3 short clips of 2 women who spent some time in a California prison. Amy Ishikawa took part in a kidnapping. Whether or not she is a feminist, she peddles the feminist victim narrative about how women in prison are victims of sexual assault, of domestic violence, of men in general, so you shouldn't be impressed with the rhetoric of being re-traumatised. But there are limits.
During my incarceration, there was a policy that was just case by case. As there were safety needs for trans women or others, it was considered by a committee, and people trickled in, one here, one there. But in 2012, there was a convicted serial rapist who was transferred into the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, California. And it was extremely traumatic for all women on all yards, because the betrayal, the abandonment, all of the feelings that women already are trying to recover from and heal from, they're being re-traumatized from the state.
My apologies for the beeping over the word rapist. Many YouTubers censor certain words because of the algorithm. Here is the second woman.
The transgender inmates started coming, I want to say during COVID. They were just slowly being incorporated into general population. We're getting the predators, people who have been incarcerated for rape, men who have been incarcerated for oral copulation, men who have been incarcerated for crimes against women. We were very nervous, angry. We weren't given a voice.
Listen to what she says about how these predators play act. They dress like women initially, but then...
There was one man who came and he wore pigtails and lipstick and pink shirts for the first 3 months. And after that, he cut his hair short, almost bald, and started wearing Levi's and white t-shirts to resemble a man again. Got a girlfriend, lived with her, and there was domestic violence there.
In case you hadn't noticed, this madness has been happening in the UK as well. The notorious case of Adam Graham, alias Isla Bryson, north of the border, led to the downfall of Nicola Sturgeon, one of the most powerful politicians in Scotland. Here is another of these perverts, this time from the West Country. Here is a demonstration by the Socialist Workers' Party. Note the trans rights placard. It goes without saying that most genuine female workers believe so-called trans rights end at the entrance to their changing room door. Like these nurses.
It just makes me feel on edge. You come into work, you're scanning the changing room before you start to undress. It's just uncomfortable, very uncomfortable.
It's disgraceful that nurses are ending up in tears prior to their shift. I mean, we are there to be an emotional support for our patients who are about to undergo surgery. And it's very difficult to do that if you're in a state of distress from having to change in front of a male.
And as ordinary members of the public worldwide wise up, they are increasingly voting with their feet. Finally, here is a group of degenerates attempting to disrupt an open-air meeting in central London.
LGBT, with the team! 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 LGBT, with the team!
Here is how such disruptions are almost invariably reported, even by the supposedly right-wing Daily Mail. The police are said to have broken up a brawl between women's rights and trans rights activists. If someone attacks you in the street and a passing policeman pulls him off you, has he broken up a brawl? A dude in a dress who invades a women's locker room isn't a vulnerable person, and he certainly isn't a victim. Don't be fooled by clowns like Navarro Media or the powerful and at times vicious lobby that is indoctrinating your kids in state-run schools. But that's another story.